what I wish to share with you is how food found my future. Can you see that? Right. I'm going to tell you something very personal, which is very much a part of me and my life. I was born in 1934, when many, many people were born, and these people today are 82 years old. But in 1935, something happened to my life which has changed me forever. Because my father came into the room and brought this. And it's called an aiwowo. And it was a whole box of aiwowo. And he said, you can have all of it. So for me, I was a year and a half, and all of this aiwowo was for me alone. It was more than I could ever have. So I was overflowing with joy and happiness. Can you imagine that? It's all for you, right? It's all for you. And I found this, as I'll show you. I've got it now for the rest of my life. I've got more love than I can handle by myself. And that is how food brought me there. And now I have to skip a few years to 1968. And me and my young family, we were in Japan. And I suddenly had a nightmare. But most people remember their dreams. I never do. I usually work and practice in my dream. So, like, my first husband would say, stop practicing, you know, because I was practicing. My second husband said to me, stop thinking, because I was an art historian by then. So, but I don't remember those dreams. But this time, I had a terrible nightmare. It was so vivid. I was in the city of New York, and the whole of New York was under a big dome completely covered the city because the air outside was completely polluted. One couldn't live outside. And in my nightmare, I was in Penn Station, and I was above, and I was looking down. Everyone was totally panicking down on the ground, looking for the different train stations. They're going to the different, on their different trains going home. And I saw my two little daughters there, completely milling in the crowd and getting lost, but everyone was panicking because the end of the world was coming. And so I went down and I found them, and I grabbed them and I took them up and went out into the street. And the street was completely empty because everyone was panicking. Everyone went to, whatever it was, their homes to hide. And I didn't want to hide. I wanted to see. And the road was completely empty, but there was a dark rider with a mask, and he was there on his Harley Davidson. And I said, hey, you know, can you stop and bring me and my daughter? We'll go out to the edge of the city. I want to go out because the end of the world was coming. And the black rider took us to the edge of the city, and we crawled under, and there it was, what I later found out was British Columbia, point, no point. But in my nightmare, I didn't know what it was. It was the ocean, there was mountains and pine trees and rocks coming out of the sea, all on fire. The sea was roiling, it was red, it was bubbling, you know, all this noise. And it was the end of the world. So I took my girls and we sat on the rock, but it didn't burn. I don't know why. In my nightmare, the rock was okay. So I sat there and I said to them, we as a species are human beings, and we are supposed to evolve. And we've been on this planet for a long time, and we are supposed to become more and more like angels, more and more like gods. But we've managed instead to destroy our planet. We've made it kaput. My mother's German, so I say kaput. So now we will sit together and watch the world come to an end. And this is a great catastrophe, which it doesn't happen every day. And so we'll be together and watch this. So then I woke up and I said, hey, family, wake up, wake up. The world is kaput. Oh, Mom, you know, the kids were saying, shh, we are sleeping. But at that time, 1968, it really was not quite disastrous, actually, in the world. But I was quite aware that the planet was in deep, deep trouble and that we had to be very, very careful because it was getting worse and it was coming to an end. Anyway, that day, I had an idea, which was the way that you have an idea, you know you have to go to class at 3 o'clock, or you are meeting somebody at a certain time. It was that kind of sure knowledge. And I had sure knowledge that my job would be to teach people how to survive on this planet without eating and drinking. Now, I'm a person who loves aiwowo. I don't want to teach people how to live without eating and drinking. But that notion was terribly, terribly strong in my head, and I couldn't get rid of this idea. And I thought, why? You know, my mother had said, you have to be quiet, you know, you have to be sehr artig. If you don't finish, then you can't eat your dessert unless you finish everything on your plate. So I'm brought up to eat very, very diligently and happily. But anyway, I just thought, well, I don't know how to eat, how to live without eating or drinking. If I must do this, I will do it, but I can't. So I've got to have a teacher. And so when the time comes, when the time is really, really urgent, that we all learn how to live without eating and drinking, then my teacher will surely show up. So having made that promise to myself, when the time comes and the teacher shows up, I will go. And that was 1968. Having made that promise, I started to worry. Is there somebody on this planet who's not eating and drinking? You know, I'm looking. Nobody. Okay, so I lived one year, 2 years, many, many years, very happily, eating and drinking. I was eating, you know, rare roast beef, red wine, and raw fish with sashimi and osake, enjoying it very much, but always having a look to see if there was somebody not eating or not drinking that I'd have to report to. But that didn't happen. So I enjoyed my life fully as a detective. I wanted to be a detective when I grew up. So here I am. I will show you. Right, we can pass this thing. So this is what I've already told you. So it took about 40 years. And what I was doing was, when the teachers and the books were telling us about Chinese paintings and calligraphy and saying many, many words about them, I didn't believe them. Because I thought, that's not it. Because they were using old texts to illustrate paintings. They were not painted by the dashi. They were painted by somebody else. So I moved, actually, to Taiwan to have a look for myself. I wanted to go to the Gugong Boguan, to the Palace Museum, so I could actually see the paintings standing there instead of looking at them as you do now, as photographs. It's quite different. So, can you see that these two pictures are very different? Do you like the one on the left or the one on the right? They are both under the same name of one master who lived 700 years ago, Wu Zhen. And he was quite a hermit. But you can see that these two paintings could not, at least in my little heart, they couldn't be by the same person. So, if you think that they are by the same person, then you are gullible. That means you believe 二手. news, secondhand news. You are not looking with your own heart. Now you just look at them carefully with your own heart and tell me if you really think they could possibly be by the same person. Okay. Let's have a look. Can you see? We just choose 2 little bits of the painting, and I'm asking you, you can see at the one painting has a whole space. You get a feeling of a place with a ground plane, with the atmosphere, with the moisture in the atmosphere, and the other is just wind, kind of like bamboo coming from the middle of its life, without a root, without the ground. Now, if we look at the way the leaves are made, I will ask my students usually, because I'm a teacher of art history, and I teach this way. I say, imagine that your skin is the paper, and that this brushwork is going on your skin. Now feel the brushwork with your own heart. Feel how it goes, with what speed, with what weight. Do you feel it scratching? Or do you feel it going gently, slowly pressing? It's different. How can that be by the same person? Can you see? They are different? Do they feel different? I'm not going to let you out of this room until you see that they are very different. You have to imagine that they are going on your skin. Right. Now this one, this bamboo in wind, is actually a forgery made about 150 years later. And from that forgery is a very famous one. And a further forgery was made about 200 years after that, the one on the right. And it's called 墨竹谱. It's called the bamboo manual, ink bamboo manual. And you can see that they are based very much, one is copying the other. And the one on the right, the bamboo manual, is even more exaggerated in its difference between the stem and the leaves. See, they just make it into a formula instead of really producing a living plant. And this 墨竹谱 has become the 国宝 of the National Palace Museum. It's one of the major treasures, and at least 2 PhD dissertations have been written about this ink bamboo manual. But it is actually, I can tell you, because I look with my heart, that it is the forgery based on another forgery produced 300 to 400 years after the master. So here we've got these things which the world loves, and the genuine painting is forgotten. Because the genuine painting is the only one of its kind. In fact, it's the only 文人画竹子, 墨竹, the ink bamboo painting of the 14th century in the world. But many, many paintings looking like the ones on the left exist in the world, and people love them because they've become used to the later ones. And then the early one, the original one, is forgotten. You don't have to believe me. Most of my colleagues refuse to believe me. Anyway, many, many happy years I spent eating. And really, I found that this is 2005, the master seems to have appeared. There was the boy who meditates alone without eating and drinking appears. I learned on TV, on the internet, that there was a boy in Nepal who, at the age of 12, became a monk, refused to have his hair cut, and sat under a tree without eating and drinking. And he did this for 6 years. No food. And no human being is known to survive longer than a few days without water. And so I thought, uh-oh, 老师来了. My boss is here. And then I thought, maybe he won't make it, because he said, leave me, please don't disturb me. I need to do this for 6 years. So I thought, I'll wait. I could still eat and drink and see if he makes it for 6 years. He does. And so then we can see him, just the hair growing longer and longer. And you see there's a bird trying to make a nest in his hair. And when he finished the 6 years, he was going to get up, and he found that there was a 蚕宝宝, some kind of a caterpillar, was making a home on his robe. So he continued sitting until it left, until it grew up and came out. And that is not to hurt a single living being. And that is the boy who doesn't eat or doesn't drink. Here his hair is coming down, covering his face. And people who went to Nepal at that time tell me the whole forest was light, was a kind of strange light, and the sound of the forest was like a symphony. The birds and the sand and the wind and the leaves in the trees, they made a music which is so harmonious. And when I went in 2012, it was totally transformative. I don't get, I'm not that sensitive as some people are, but I felt very much being part of a kind of oneness that I had never felt before. So I thought, if I go and sit there and do my meditation, maybe I will be a meditator, because at that time, I had been in Japan, and I was doing zazen, 打坐, 入禅, and I had spent 3 days and 3 nights with a colleague who teaches Japanese art at the University of Washington in Seattle. We did a retreat together when I had come back from Japan. And after that retreat, I said, I feel so happy. And he said, Joan, I'm so exhausted. Sitting next to you is terrible. What? You have not been still for 1 minute. I said, oh, absolutely. I was holding 1,000 horses. I was holding them back. And I was sitting quiet like a mountain, going, oh. He said, no. You were like riding on a country road, a bumpy country road, on a horse buggy with wooden wheels that are square and going full tilt. And so I, of course, felt very bad because I'm not a very good zazen meditator. So I felt if I went and sat next to this boy, I might really, really disturb his sitting because he would hear what Glenn Webb had heard. So I didn't go, and I waited till afterwards to go in 2012. But after I left, then I never left his side. This is more like what he looks like when I went. His hair had already become long, and he would just night and day and night and day. Disciples built a platform for him near his tree, and so he would sit there night and day, and people would come and get a blessing. And I have to say, I told you nobody believes what I'm saying, but having surrendered to the Guru, something happened to me. And the media want to interview me like as though I were a movie star. This is just really an academic thing, you know. So I said, what happened, Guru? Have you to do with this? Is it because of you? And Guru was sitting up there on his stage, and he said 3 things. The first sentence, he said, human beings reject truth. And then his second statement is human beings worship fakes. And fakes proliferate. There's more and more fakes giving birth to more fakes. And then he waited a bit and he said, truth needs a little support. I said, oh my God, you beautiful Guru. Am I looking at this little support? And meanwhile, Nepal was devastated last year, 10 years after Guru started sitting. And the monks of Guru, they are wearing blue. That's the color of my theya. And so they are working to help the planet and to help at least all the devastation that is around there in Nepal. And I was also helping Guru get the food because Guru sent a message, say, get Mama Joan, I'm called Mama Joan there, ask Mama Joan to get 30 tons of rice. I thought, how am I going to get 30 tons of rice? I don't speak Nepali. But I got it. The next day, I got 30 tons of rice. I rang up the Zhonghua Si. In Lumbini, there is the temple, a Chinese Zen temple, Chinese Chan temple, Zhonghua Chan Si in Lumbini. And I rang up there and said, 中英法师, 我需要30吨白米，你有吗? So they said, yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you for giving me a chance to do this. And come up to Kathmandu and we'll get you the rice. And so we brought this up to the mountain because all around us, there was not one single house standing. All the families were destroyed. The earth just simply split. And we got all the 30 tons of rice. We put it into this house, which actually has a big split down the middle. And the monks were working there night and day, helping. These are little children there. And even the Taiwan architect, Xie Yingjun from Atelier 3, who works also in Wenchuan. In Sichuan, he's been there for years, rebuilding. So their team came up to Dading in Nepal to build his type of houses, which will withstand 9.2 earthquakes on the Richter scale. So that is now being spread in Nepal as well. And I am trying to actually find a way to produce food that will be delicious and health-giving as well as cheap. We've been learning to live in nature, which plants are good for us, and humans, animals, and plants will live in harmony. And so then there will be just this oneness. Hopefully, the oneness will return to this planet, which had indeed once produced unmitigated happiness on this planet, and it will be so again. So, if for information about this, you can go to maitreya.info, and it's in many, like in 17 languages, and you can see about our activities and the teachings of Guru. And so I can teach you this word, Maitri Mangalam. Maitri Mangalam. And thank you very much.